Have you ever been in a conversation where someone says something so confidently, and yet so unbelievably wrong, that your brain just pauses for a second? You look around the room like, did everyone else hear that? Maybe it's the coworker who insists that drinking cold water gives you the flu, or the friend who read one headline and now believes they've uncovered a global conspiracy, or that guy online arguing for hours about something that could be solved with a 10-second search. And the strange part is this: they're not always uneducated. Sometimes they even sound smart, confident, assertive. So what's going on in the brain when someone consistently makes poor judgments, struggles to think critically, or simply refuses to learn? Today, we're exploring something that psychology rarely explains in a simple way: the behavioral patterns often linked to extremely low intellectual functioning. Not in a mocking way, not in a judgmental way, but in a way that helps us understand how thinking works, and why some minds get stuck. Because intelligence isn't just about solving math problems or memorizing facts. It's about how your brain processes reality. And when that process breaks down, certain patterns start to appear. Let's start with something you've probably seen before. Imagine someone who is absolutely certain about almost everything, not confident in a healthy way, but convinced, completely convinced. They rarely say, "I might be wrong." Instead, it's always, "I know the truth." Psychologists call this the illusion of understanding. It's strongly related to what researchers discovered in the famous work of David Dunning and Justin Kruger, the phenomenon where people with very low competence often overestimate their ability. In other words, the less someone understands a topic, the harder it is for them to recognize that they don't understand it. It's like trying to judge your own eyesight when you've never seen clearly before. If your mental resolution is low, you literally can't detect the blur. This is why one of the earliest signs of extremely low intellectual functioning is extreme certainty paired with shallow knowledge. They don't question themselves, they don't pause, they rarely explore nuance. The brain simply lands on the first explanation and locks it in. But here's where it gets even more interesting. A second pattern tends to appear right next to this one: an intense discomfort with complexity. The human brain loves shortcuts. Psychologists call them heuristics. They help us make fast decisions without thinking too hard. But when someone has limited cognitive flexibility, those shortcuts become the entire thinking process. Complex problems get simplified into cartoon versions of reality. Every issue becomes black or white. Every disagreement becomes good versus evil. Every explanation must be quick, simple, and emotionally satisfying. Think about it like this: reality is a giant puzzle with thousands of pieces. Most people are willing to sit down, look at the shapes, and slowly assemble the picture. But a low processing brain tends to do something different. It grabs 5 pieces, forces them together, and declares the puzzle finished. Now, if you challenge that picture, something else happens. And this leads to another revealing sign: defensive anger when confronted with new information. You might have noticed this before in arguments. Instead of curiosity, "That's interesting, tell me more," the reaction becomes emotional, dismissal, mockery, sometimes even aggression. Why? Because for many people with extremely low cognitive flexibility, beliefs aren't just ideas. They're part of identity. When a belief gets challenged, the brain interprets it almost like a threat to survival. Neuroscience research shows that belief challenges can activate the same threat circuits involved in physical danger. The brain goes into protection mode, but here's the difference. A more flexible mind can pause and say, "Maybe I need to rethink this." A less flexible one doubles down. It protects the belief at all costs. And that brings us to another subtle but powerful pattern: difficulty learning from mistakes. Think about your own life for a moment. Most of us have made terrible decisions before. Bad relationships, bad investments, embarrassing moments we wish we could delete from memory. But ideally, those experiences update our internal map of the world. We think, okay, next time I'll do that differently. This ability is called adaptive learning, the brain's capacity to adjust behavior based on feedback. When intellectual functioning is very low, that update process often fails. The same mistakes repeat, over and over and over. You might know someone like this. Every year they fall into the same financial traps, the same toxic friendships, the same impulsive decisions. And when you gently point it out, they say something like, "Yeah, but this time it'll be different." It's almost like their brain resets the lesson each time. But intelligence isn't only about learning from the past, it's also about imagining the future, which leads to another fascinating sign: difficulty thinking beyond the immediate moment. Psychologists sometimes call this short time horizon thinking. The brain focuses almost entirely on what feels good right now. Consequences tomorrow, next month, or next year barely register. It's like driving a car while only seeing 5 feet ahead. Sure, the road looks clear, until suddenly it isn't. This pattern often shows up in impulsive behaviors: spending money they don't have, saying things they shouldn't say, making decisions without considering how they'll unfold later. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for planning and long-term reasoning, simply isn't doing as much work. And because of that, another pattern appears. One that you might notice, especially in conversations. Struggling to follow multi-step reasoning. Have you ever tried explaining something fairly simple, but the other person keeps getting lost halfway through? You start with point A, you move to point B, you connect it to point C. But somewhere in that chain, the thread disappears. This happens because higher intelligence relies heavily on working memory, the ability to hold several ideas in your mind at once and manipulate them. It's like juggling thoughts. When working memory is weak, juggling becomes almost impossible. So the brain defaults to the simplest possible interpretation. Complex explanations feel exhausting. Nuance feels confusing. Which is why many people with extremely low intellectual functioning gravitate towards slogans, one-liners, or emotionally charged statements instead of layered reasoning. And finally, there's one more pattern that quietly ties many of these together: a lack of curiosity. Not the occasional boredom we all feel, but a deeper absence of interest in learning anything new. Curiosity is one of the most reliable psychological signals of cognitive engagement. Smart minds ask questions constantly. Why does that happen? How does this work? What if I'm wrong? But when intellectual curiosity is low, the brain becomes closed to exploration. It stops seeking new mental territory. And over time, that creates a kind of intellectual stagnation. The world stops expanding, ideas stop evolving, and the person ends up living inside a very small mental map. Now here's the part that's important. None of these signs are meant to shame anyone, because intelligence is not a moral virtue. It's a mix of genetics, upbringing, education, environment, and life experience. Some people never had the chance to develop critical thinking skills. Others grew up in environments where curiosity was discouraged, and sometimes what looks like low intelligence is actually something else entirely: stress, trauma, poor sleep, burnout, or even simple misinformation. But understanding these patterns can still be incredibly valuable, because the real goal isn't to label others. It's to protect your own thinking, to remind yourself to stay curious, to question your assumptions, to welcome complexity instead of running from it. The most fascinating twist in all of psychology is this: highly intelligent people often feel less certain about things. They say, "I might be wrong," more often. They change their minds when evidence changes. They remain students of the world. In other words, intelligence isn't about having all the answers. It's about staying open to better questions. So the next time you catch yourself feeling absolutely certain about something, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, is this the full picture? Or just the easiest explanation? Because the healthiest brain isn't the one that always wins arguments. It's the one that keeps growing. And if this video made you think about the way people reason, or maybe even the way you reason, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think is the biggest sign that someone has stopped thinking critically? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy exploring the psychology behind everyday behavior, consider subscribing. Because the more we understand how our minds work, the better we get at using them.